We all need teachers, coaches, mentors of all kinds in our lives. We come to them when we are at the crossroads and feel that our knowledge and experience are limited in solving problems and making critical decisions. We come to them when we simply need a strong support system and guidance. We can often rely on friends and relatives, but when we get sick, we still ask to see specialists, people with specific skills and expertise. Nowadays, very few will be surprised if we tell them that we have life or career coaches. It is a new norm because it's really tough to navigate alone through a universe that is becoming more and more complex. We need specialists, expert navigators. And how about the scary world of money? Many feel intimidated and simply try to hide from it, totally relying on someone else. And what if that someone else, a parent or spouse or a close relative, is not there anymore? Suddenly everything seems to fall apart. The ground is cut from under their feet and life spins out of control. People feel lost, terrified. And this is when the money coaches come to the rescue. Today, we are privileged to meet with one of them and learn about this new and ever-growing profession. Her name is Yulin Lee, and she is a financial coach. Let's dive into the cold world of money. Yulin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
When we met and I heard your story and I heard what you do, I thought this was a very important topic, and that's why we invited you to the studio. I would let you describe what you really do.
Well, I'm a financial coach, and sometimes I use the name money coach. They're kind of synonymous to me. What I do is I help women take control of their finances. Oftentimes people say they have a dream, they want financial freedom, but really are their day-to-day actions are in line with the dreams.
Why specifically women?
For me, there's a couple reasons. One is I used to be a financial advisor, and I used to also work in real estate. And what I noticed is there's a big difference between how men and women deal with money differently. And part of that is understanding and observing there's a need in giving more support to women, both not just in the skill part, but also more about that emotional support. Because oftentimes women have a smaller identity around money. Because for thousands of years around the world, most girls are taught to be a nice girl, you grow up, you be a nice wife, you be a nice mother. Oftentimes the message is the boy is the one that's going to take care of the family financially, and the woman takes care of the family internally. And so that's such deep-rooted concept, and oftentimes women get those messages even without even understanding it. So I've came across many women in multiple cultures who really don't see themselves as someone who can be a really good money manager.
I found myself really feeling like not money savvy. Like I didn't understand kind of basic principles. I just felt really overwhelmed by my finances, by my personal finances.
What's the difference between financial advisor and a financial or money coach?
Right. As a financial advisor, the job is mainly focused on helping people to invest the assets they already have. Right? So that's the traditional model. If you have some money and you say, hey, I don't really know about investing, or I want better returns or better performance on the money I already have, I hand it over to a financial advisor who are professionally trained and licensed to really focus on the investing part of managing your assets. Now, as a coach, I don't do any of that. I don't manage people's assets. What I do is I help them on the day-to-day decision-making, the day-to-day behaviors around how to deal with money. Because at the end of the day, if we're better in our day-to-day management of money, we will have more money left over for the advisors to manage and invest. But particularly for Americans, there's so much of this consumer spending and all the other issues. For many people, there's not a whole lot to get, to hand over for investing. And so the coaching is really focused on helping the person to become better at managing the money themselves. And then they can either hand it over or they can learn how to invest on their own. Because at the end of the day, I always tell people, it's your money.
Was it for you an aha moment, or you gradually came to the decision that you want to become a money coach?
It was a process. This is my third career, so I've gone through some iterations of different professions, but it happened when I was living in Paris, and that was a time where, for the first 2 years I was living there, I was a stay-home mom for the first time in my life, and that was a big aha moment for me because it was a big shift in my own identity. There were moments where I would ask myself, what am I? And so I've gone through my own kind of soul-searching moments and personal growth process to get to a point where, I was asking myself, what's next for me? And it was a combination of thinking all the things I've done, all the skill sets I have, but it's also about what's giving me the fire, what drives me to get up in the morning to do what I do. And so it's a culmination of that. And particularly serving for women has been an idea in my head for a long time. Even when I was a financial advisor, I was thinking about maybe I want to just focus on really giving extra support to women who, particularly maybe going through a divorce or single, that need that extra help.
As many of us, you were not born in the US.
Right.
So maybe a little bit of your personal story.
Okay. So I was born in China. I was born in Shanghai, big city, and during the communist times. So, and that's, one of the things I tell people is that I grew up in an environment, there wasn't a whole lot. We had a roof over our head, we had food, but really it was kind of minimal. Like we didn't have all the other extra stuff that we take it for granted these days. So we didn't have vacations, we didn't have, I didn't have any toys, and so it was just play in the alley with your friends, right? So life was very simple. But one thing I tell my clients, and when I do workshops and when I give talk, is that even though I grew up in an environment where I didn't have much materially, I never felt poor. And I really attribute that to how I was raised by my parents. And now looking back, also working with clients, I really start to see how different stories, messages that we've acquired as kids actually, stay with us all of our lives. And a lot of it is money, related beliefs or, negative thoughts. I just had talk yesterday with someone, they just had this hatred about money. And a lot of that comes from childhood.
You're not good at it, you're not good at managing it, you're not good at making it, you're not good at tracking it. Those were stories that I told myself a lot.
Maybe we can talk about your clients. Maybe a couple stories, what kind of clients you have, and maybe what really comes to mind when we mention the word client. Right.
Well, first thing come to mind, women. They tend to be between the age of, I would say, 40 to mid to late 50s. So I would say 40 to 60. That's the bulk of my clients. And I think one of the reasons is because when people turn 40, that's kind of a transitional and pivotal moments in our lives for everybody, whether it's man or woman. In our 40s, we start to look back and think about, what have I done? And that's when we start to also reflect a lot more, and also thinking about the next chapter. For for most people, it doesn't matter what their life stories are. And so, I think this is probably where most people are most attracted to say, oh, maybe I should work with a coach to better what's coming next for me. Versus when we're in the 20s and 30s, it was, just speaking from my own experience, it was a lot more do. Right. There wasn't a whole lot of reflection. So when people get into 40s, they start to reflect. And the one thing that I hear a lot from my clients are, gosh, I just realized I've been working for the last 20 years, but I don't have much to show for financially.
I see.
And this is, again, when they're thinking about what my retirement would look like. What is that, that next chapter. And that's when the money kicks in and say, and I have clients who right now work, attorneys, make a ton of money, but they don't have much saved up. So they've been living a good life, right? And so now retirement's on the horizon. How do I continue to support the lifestyle?
Any life events that would trigger the kind of a need to come to you? Like, I know people divorce and they look for spouses.
Right. So divorcing women is a specialty area that I do, that I work in. Either women going through a divorce right now or have just gone out of a divorce. And the process for again, for most women going through divorce in their, let's say, 40s or early 50s, oftentimes the big challenge for them is they probably have been a stay-at-home mom in many cases. They have given up their career. And so their focus and their entire life had been on the family. And that's part of their identity, right? And so now 10, 15 years later, they end up in a divorce situation. One of the extra burden, the extra hit, and I'll call it the double whammy, is that on top of the emotional trauma of breaking up a marriage and a family, is that financial piece. That all of a sudden they started getting to this fear of, oh my God, how do I support myself going forward? And this fear is the same for women who walk away with a big settlement as it is for someone who walk away with nothing.
Right.
Because for the women who even walk away with a lot of money, the fear is, oh my God, what if I screw up? I'm going to lose it all.
You
and there's no more
mentioned
coming
once this
in.
client who had lots of money from the divorce, but was terrified.
Yeah. I mean, I have multiple clients like that, where the fear of having that money in the bank is no less than somebody who doesn't have it. And that's because it's really the lack of self-confidence and the trust, right? Because again, it's going back to that identity, and that's why my coaching work, a lot of it is helping women to gain that identity back about as someone who can be good at managing their money, right? So for someone who has not been touching the family finances for 10, 15, 20 years, they don't see themselves as someone who can do it. And that's actually I think that what I call the silent killer is that's what's stopping and making these women to be like frozen. And that's the word I hear all the time. It's like, I feel paralyzed, I feel frozen, I'm freaking out, I don't know what to do.
And suddenly,
even if I have the money in the bank, I don't know what to do.
Right, and suddenly they discover they don't know the password, they don't know accounts, they know where the money is, and
so
they have to discover it with someone's help.
So that's a different set of issue for women who are going through the divorce, and that perfect example, women I've been working with, a few women that I've been working with, is they don't necessarily have access to the statements, the bank accounts, or the tax returns, right? And so they have no clarity and no visibility into collectively what they have together. And so oftentimes, if you think of, and that's another reason why I so want to focus on working with women, is systematically, there isn't a whole lot of support for women going through that process. So if you think about a typical divorce situation, couples probably go to a therapy, right? And they get the emotional help support, and they go to attorneys to do the legal splitting of the assets. And then they may go to family therapists to deal with their children. But where do the women go for, or men, in the case if he's not the one that's been making money. But, for the woman that hasn't been making money, where does she go for getting support on the financial piece of it? And then another aspect of that is there's a lot of shame and embarrassment. So oftentimes they don't reach out for help, and even talking to, and I hear that from my clients, I don't want to tell my mom, or I don't want to tell my sister my financial stuff, or I don't even want to talk to my girlfriends about financial stuff, right? There's so much embarrassment around the money piece. They can talk to people about men, sex, children, everything else, but they're so embarrassed to talk about money. And
sometimes money just terrifies people.
Yeah.
They're trying to kind of get away from it as fast as possible.
Right. So
as far as possible.
Right. So a lot of it is actually the emotional, how we're dealing with money is creating that isolation box for the people that are in the situation. And that's a big part of my coaching is helping them to regain that confidence. And so when I think about my work, I think about, you're teaching people to fish instead of giving them the fish. Right. And so instead of giving clients the answer, if they come and say, just tell me what to do, I usually don't give out the quick answer because that's not what I'm here for. I want to train and support them to be able to ask those questions because, honestly, I don't have all the answers either, but I know how to go find answers when I don't have it. And that's what I do as a coach.
Do you work with other specialists like lawyers and psychologists and financial advisors?
Yeah, so I get referrals from psychologists, therapists. I get referrals from family attorneys who are working with a divorcing couple, and they see a need for, the woman needing help on the financial part. So I get support that I get referrals that way. But I also do work with other professionals like divorce coach who help the clients on the emotional side of things. We work together on a common client. So yeah, so it's both scenarios.
So what's the process? How do you work with your clients? Is it like one-on-one session, or is it a group session? Is it a workshop? They need to be local, or they can be in a different country. So how does it work?
Yeah, so all of my coaching are done over Zoom. So it's all virtual. I have clients in France, because that's where I started.
Yeah, 21st century.
Yeah. And then I have clients out of state. Even local clients, I don't meet them in person. Unless they really ask for that for maybe the first one or two times, just because they want to see me in person. Right. But I don't get that request much either. I mean, I have a lot of local clients that I haven't met in person, but we talk on video all the time. So that's how, physically how my coaching is done. And I use Google Drive where I share documents and all that stuff. In terms of my program, so I have one program that's for majority of my client. It's a 4-month program where we start with the mindset work. Because to me, that's the foundational piece of any success. If you think about athletes, right? Athletes, all athletes, they know the skills, they know the drill, they know what to do. But that extra 1 point where how they become the winner, oftentimes is when the coach work with their psychology. And that's the part that, to me, that's the foundational piece, is that if you can manage your own emotions well, and if you can be more self-aware of your behaviors, then whatever you learn will really propel you to the next level. So my coaching program starts with a mindset work, and that's usually a couple of sessions. And then we move into what I called, let's roll up our sleeves and scrub the numbers. I help them really evaluate where they are. And that is usually the hardest piece, because oftentimes people don't want to look at it. Right. In some ways, they know it's not what they want to see, so they're in denial oftentimes, right? So it's about really examining what's coming in, what's going out, where are the holes, where are the leaks, or where do we need to make improvement. And so this is usually, like I said, it's the hardest part, and oftentimes I literally have to grab their hands and say, if you can do it on your own, let's do it together, sit down and let's do it together. And then the last part is really helping them to build out the future that they want. I hear a lot of people say, I visualize this is the lifestyle that I want. But then they don't go down to the next level, which is putting a price tag on your dreams, right? Your dream life, how much is it going to cost you? Is that a $5,000 a month? Is it a $10,000 a month? Because, that's at the end of the day, that's what you need to shoot for, right? So if people say, I want to have, financial freedom, I want to be able to stop working for money, so then you need to know how much it costs you to live. Right, and so that's part of designing their life with the intention of understanding what does that cost you, and then from there we work backwards and say what is the action plan to work towards there.
She took all the components of personal finance that I felt were really overwhelming, and she broke them down. And that was really helpful and made it really easy to follow, and definitely took away overwhelm. The structure that she'd already created took out a lot of the guesswork, and then knowing that she was going to be on the next call helped keep me accountable to actually implementing, putting my numbers in and working with her around it. She helped me source answers from within. I really appreciate Yulin's ability to take me on an inward journey to find my own wisdom and to really meaningfully rewrite my story around my personal finances.
What was your most difficult case?
But it's someone who say they want the change, and they come to the session and they say, yes, I want to do this, and they're very agreeable during the session, but then once they leave, they just don't do anything. I do my part in following up and checking in on them, but at the end of the day, if they really can't handle it emotionally for whatever reason, I have to give them the space to process that. So that will probably be, those type of cases I would say are the most difficult, because, as a coach, I like to see improvements and changes and in my clients. And when they walk away and again can't really bring themselves back, that's really difficult for me.
What's your criteria for success?
It depends on what they come in with, right? So and that's part of what we talk about when we first come in is where do you think your problems are? Where do you want it to be? And so at the end of the day, that's how we measure, right? Is you come in, and oftentimes they come in with a certain problem on the surface.
Right.
But really, there's some underlying problems behind that, right? And that they didn't see when they come in. And so that's part of that success is actually understanding, being able to peel the onion and say,
digging deeper.
Yeah, to actually find the source of the problem as opposed to how it manifested on the surface. And that's usually how they come in is the manifestation of the underlying problem. And then also asking them, where do you really want to be, right? And so solving the problem today is one thing, but really how do we put you on a trajectory, on a path to really kind of your ideal situation, your ideal life? That's another measure of success for me.
Your most memorable case?
Probably one of the divorce case I worked on earlier on. Just the process of seeing them going through the struggle, but then still having that strength to work with me one step at a time. Sometimes we may even have to break one step into half a step. To see a client like that, to make progress to a place where they can be at peace with themselves and to say, yes, I'm going to be on my own. And also just to say, you know what, instead of rushing, because that's the other patterns I see when people get out of the divorce is rushing into making certain decisions to create this new life. And that's just another form of feeling that insecurity, that needing to have something to keep me safe. But when a person says, I'm just going to take my time, I'm going to process it, and that takes self-confidence and that takes kind of management and assurance. And so when I see clients do that, that's very satisfying because you can see they're building that inner strength and inner confidence.
Do you have a mentor?
Yes, I have multiple. I believe that everyone can use a coach in different areas of your life. And so for me, I've had coaches throughout my, especially for this particular profession now, I've had coaches for the last 5 years where different coaches that help me with different aspect of my life and business. Mostly for me right now it's business. Yeah, so I do have a business coach.
When I talked with my wife about this topic, she asked me to ask a specific question.
All right.
And it's really practical suggestion to our viewers. For example, what is the biggest mistake to avoid and the most important skill to develop in money management?
Okay. The biggest mistake, if I were to say for women, is being in denial. I see that all the time is, I'll deal with it later. I'm okay now. My husband is making the money, we can live fine. It's that being in denial and not really wanting to step into their own power and say, my husband is doing great, but I can also be a good manager at the same time, right? And so that's probably the biggest mistake for women, and as it comes to money. And in terms of skill sets, it's
the most important skill to develop, just one maybe.
Just one.
The most important.
Habits, the habit of being comfortable, checking your statements, looking at your finances, and also always think in terms of investing.
Okay.
And I always tell people, you can't save fast enough to keep up with inflation, right? The traditional model is, yes, I need to be frugal, I need to save, and as long as I do that, I'll be fine. But to me, that's not enough. You really have to really think everything in terms of return on investment, right? And so the dollar today that I don't spend, it's not just about saving and putting in the bank that earns less than 1%, right? It's the dollar that I don't spend today, how do I put that into investment that can grow and make money work for me as opposed to me slaving away, trading my time for money. We can always trace this back, like whatever beliefs or negative feelings they have around money, we can always trace this back to something happened in their childhood,
I see.
how they were raised,
Right.
or a particular incident, or just how their parents behaved around money. That even for parents who don't talk about money to them, that's a teaching in itself to the kids about you cannot talk about money. But wouldn't it be great if we can actually start the kids earlier on? So that's why my work, I'm going upstream.
I see.
I want to catch them when they're earlier in life. So I'm starting to teach financial literacy to kids, and I've done some camps where they teach high schoolers on financial literacy, on investing, and I'm also creating a program for graduating high schoolers.
In my opinion, financial education and money management should start in kindergarten. Just like you have math and science, you should have personal finance. It is such a unavoidable part of life that the fact that it's not addressed more clearly from the beginning and consistently throughout a kid's education is mind-boggling to me.
The philosophy behind my work is integrating your mind work and then your actual money work. And when you integrate the two, and that's really where the power comes in. Because if you're only thinking about the mindset, what I say is you have a tendency to live in the la land, right? Like believing the law of the universe and the law of attraction, which is all great, and I believe in that. But if that's all you do, then you're just always praying, right? But then if you just focus on the money part, then at some point we tend to lose ourselves. We lose the understanding of why we're making money in the first place. And so to me is when you integrate the two, that's when you can feel, oh, I can be really in good standing with money, in charge of money, but also use money for the goods. And because that's another thing I hear a lot from people is I don't want to deal with the money because money's dirty.
Yeah.
And if I'm rich, I must be bad. I must be, and so a lot of that thinking. And again, if you integrate the two, and you bring the heart into it, and you bring the money part into it, that's when you can really create power and help change the world.
And a coach should be a very passionate coach like you.
Yeah. I'm very passionate about what I do. Yes.
All right. Time flies, and unfortunately, we have to wrap up. It was really a pleasure to talk to you, and
thank you.
I'm sure our viewers will learn something from this, and will consider financial or money coach.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again.
Well, thank you for having me.
We all remember from school that knowledge is power. Things that seem very difficult and almost impossible to comprehend become more achievable if we have the right teacher, coach, driving us and empowering us with new skills and knowledge. The same is true about money. We just need to make the first step. I'd like to wish Yulin great success in her very honorable profession and continue to be a teacher, mentor, coach, and for many, simply a rescuer. Till next time, I'm your host, Ade Kanukai. Shortly after our conversation with Yulin Lee, our lives changed dramatically. Our lives have been turned upside down because of a tiny virus with some alien name, COVID-19, ravaging the planet. It feels that we're living in a script of some horror movie. Many lives have been lost, and nothing will heal that wound. But also many families have been financially devastated. And we decided to meet with Yulin again in search for some expert advice. This conversation can be found on YouTube under the title, Hello, I Need a Money Coach, Postscriptum. Please stay safe.